Hey everyone, Jeff Kirdeikis here with Brian Gallagher, the co-founder of Partisia, which is an upcoming layer one blockchain. We're going to be diving in on this call all about Partisia. But first of all, Brian, thanks for popping on and taking the time. I know it's late for you where you're at.
Thanks, Jeff. Really looking forward to this and connecting with the Trust Swap community. It's an amazing community. I've been a token holder actually for a long time. And it's cool to see how much you've grown and developed. The product is amazing and very Web3. So congratulations on all of your progress and success.
Much appreciated. I think the thing in crypto is all about synergy. I think where there's a lot of projects all trying to compete against each other and build unique things. So the more that we can create synergy, the better, that's for sure. So happy to be teaming our two projects up as we can. To dive in here, I'm curious if you can just give people some context on your personal background, the relevant experience that you have in building a layer one blockchain, and what led you to this endeavor as well.
Yeah, awesome. And we share that same sentiment about synergy. That's why we designed our layer one to also bridge and connect a bunch of other networks and offer our private smart contracts to all of the existing and thriving developer communities. We'll talk about that a bit later on in the call. My personal background, my name is Brian Gallagher. I am one of three co-founders of Partisia blockchain. My other co-founder is Kurt Nielsen. He's a PhD in game theory and economics. And he's the co-founder of Partisia, the company, which has been operating since 2008. Partisia is a Danish cryptography group based out of Aarhus, Denmark, at the Aarhus Computer Science Institute, as well as Copenhagen. And Partisia has specialized in advanced cryptography solutions, selling to enterprise, so more private environment technology. So for example, if you Google MPC goes live, a Danish sugar auction, in 2008, the Partisia team launched the first ever commercial use case of multi-party computation when they ran a private sealed bid sugar auction for the Danish government. So it's the first time that MPC, which is now a term that's becoming a bit more popular with companies like Fireblocks reaching multi-billion-dollar valuations for their MPC-powered key sharing softwares. 2008 is when the first ever commercial use case was launched by Partisia. So the team behind it, Ivan Damgaard is one of the co-founders. He is one of the most famous cryptographers in the world. If you Google him, there's thousands of research papers published between him, Kurt, and the other team members like Jesper Boost Nielsen, Claudio Orlandi. So it's a very advanced specialty amongst the team in advanced cryptography solutions. And so for me, I was graduated from the WP Carey School of Business in 2012. I launched my first startup, undergroundseller.com, in 2013. We were really fortunate and got accepted to Y Combinator. So we had made that move to San Francisco, grew the company a bit, and it really took off from there. It does reliably $1 million plus in sales every month. So I was really fortunate to actually get right into startups out of university. And in 2015, when I was at Y Combinator with Underground Seller, that's when Coinbase raised their $100 million round from the New York Stock Exchange. And so that's when I entered and bought my first Bitcoins off of Coinbase in 2015. So I got involved from just a speculator and believer in the vision and mission of Bitcoin to sort of decentralize money and have, sound money with fixed supply and, transparent economics. And then because I was on Coinbase, they launched ETH in 2016-ish, I believe it was. So I bought some ETH, and I didn't understand what ETH was. I went to their website and it talked about, ICO, a new term, and said you can launch your own coin. And I actually conceptually never had thought of blockchain beyond Bitcoin. I thought it was money. I just thought that's what it was. I didn't realize the potential use cases. So when ETH came out and I started realizing, wow, there's a lot more to this. I started thinking, what are the types of different things you can do with blockchains? How can you add value to the user by letting them control their own data and then choose when people can exchange this data? How do we make things more transparent and on blockchains where we can connect end users like enterprise consumer? And so then we started working with Partisia because my co-founder Darwin Lowe was a Stanford computer scientist. He found Partisia with a Google search because he was interested in MPC. So we started working together then in 2017, and we made a deal that we're going to work together on a couple data exchange use cases, integrating MPC with blockchain. But the long-term goal was a layer one. And so we have built, and we did research and development for like 2 years, and now we've built this layer one. And it's all about solving the blockchain trilemma and then extending that by bringing privacy to blockchain. So we solve for scalability by having sharding built into the protocol. We solve and make interoperability more secure by using MPC, similar to how Fireblocks in a private environment works. We sort of have a decentralized open node operator network that can operate the keys and have secret key sharing schemes. And that's how we bridge assets across chains. And then we have privacy on blockchain, which is the most important, unique value proposition that we bring to the industry. So we have zero knowledge smart contracts that can compute on multiple parties' private data. So one easy example to understand is like a sealed bid Victory auction. So we could have 100 people place bids for an NFT, for example. It will hide all the bids from each other and only reveal the winning bid at the end. So you can eliminate like wash bidding and spoofing of markets with this technology while maintaining that integrity. So that's what took us so long to get to this place, is we took our time and really spent, instead of just launching a product and going to market during hype cycles, we actually used the team, the advanced cryptography team, to develop an amazing solution that accounts for all the pitfalls we've seen in other networks. So we believe we're coming to the market at a time where it's needed more than ever to have sound solutions for those few items: scalability, interoperability, privacy. And so there's a lot of amazing use cases that we're working on, so we can talk about during this interview as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I've heard of the trilemma phrased as something a little bit different. And, I've heard it phrased as cost or, fee, decentralization, and security as the three. I definitely like the three that you're talking about as well. In terms of, cost, decentralization, and security, I think that's always the trade-off, when you look at something like Ethereum versus Avalanche versus Solana. The more centralized it is, the lower the cost can be, the faster it can go. How does Partisia fit into that? For someone who's, let's say, familiar with just an Ethereum and let's use Binance Smart Chain, I think they're pretty contrasting chains. How would Partisia fit in that spectrum?
Yeah, so we're more towards Binance Smart Chain in terms of cost, because we're about 5 cents per kilobyte. And so an average basic transaction maybe be like 0.2 kilobytes. So you're looking at 1 cent per transaction. And some people say, well, Solana is 0.0001 cents. They also get spam and DDoS attacked because it's cheap enough to do so. So you need to find this balance. Like, how do you be affordable and cost effective, but not open yourself to constant spam and DDoS? Because if someone wants to jam 1 million transactions on the chain to try to mess things up, it's going to cost them, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50K to do so. And with sharding, we're able to then shard the transactions instead of just having one large queue. Like on Ethereum, if there's a lot of network activity, it's kind of a bidding war. Who wants to pay more gas, and you're just in a long line. We can push the transactions to different shards. So if someone did jam 1 million transactions at us, we're able to spread them out across different shards and fulfill them quickly and efficiently, and then the node operators get paid. So that's kind of how we solve that problem and lean more towards Binance Smart Chain on the cost perspective, but the structure is different. We have sharding, so it's more scalable.
Gotcha. Zooming out a little bit, building in layer one, it's just been staggering to see some of these blockchains come out with immense grant funds, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not $500 million to, incentivize people to use their chain, to build on it. How do you see Partisia positioning itself to be able to attract developers and multiple dApps to make it a thriving ecosystem and not, quote unquote, a ghost chain?
Great question. So if you look at the history of a lot of the chains, they started with like Solana, I think it was a 12 mil seed round. So really it's the job of the founders to have that successful growth and get it to a stage where we continue to raise more funds. So we have a roadmap and strategy to do, a multi-$100 million round in maybe a year. And the way we get there, for us, our strategy is multi-tiered. So First of all, when we built this layer one, we knew that coming to the market with a layer one now, no matter how great your technology is, if you go out there and raise your hand and say, hey, everyone, we're more scalable, we have privacy, we're better than the others, it won't matter. No one's going to just migrate their whole dApp over. So we actually built this with a network effect built in, where we allow people to buy and stake MPC and deploy private smart contracts, but we've created data bridges to their native chains. So we launched a partnership with Emergo, the co-founder of Cardano, so that we've now bridged these private smart contracts to Cardano. So Cardano now gets the benefit of using our private smart contracts. So we're adding value to the existing developer networks, and we have the built-in utility for that to buy and stake our tokens to use this technology that is currently not available anywhere else on the market. And so in the next 12 months, we'll have 10 of the top 20 chains integrated. We have a top 20 chain already partnership completed that we'll announce in the next couple of weeks that has one of the biggest developer ecosystems. So that's going to be super exciting. And then we're just going down the list. So the network effect is built in where we're actually bridging all the other chains and then allowing them to use our ZK smart contracts. So there's the network effect there. But one thing we do is we also handhold and build a few of the biggest use cases with some teams. So since it's early in the layer one, we're working on a couple massive use cases. So we are working on a TradeFi project with some major people who quit working at one of the largest banks in the world after 22 years and being literally in charge of all of the global head of banking, like private banking. They're launching a trade gap use case, which is $1.7 trillion a year, gets basically not paid in international trade. So they're deploying a smart contract system to collateralize funds. So that if I were an African toy manufacturer sending toys to Georgia, for example, that would be a high risk trade where you can't trust either side's bank. If you will pay up front, you can't trust your goods will arrive. And if you send and wait for payment when it gets there, you can't trust that that person's going to pay you. So they're deploying a smart contract system to allow this vendor network to start leveraging blockchain to post collateral. So typically a bank would post a letter of credit and say, hey, I take responsibility for this transaction. It actually opens up an entirely new DeFi market. Anyone can now LP a deal. So the company running the system is basically going to do the authentication of airway bills and different bill of ladings, verify it's real, and then anyone who would typically LP in like a liquidity pool, they can LP on international trade. So that's a $1.7 trillion a year pitfall in that economy that they're trying to solve for. And then we also are deploying a private stablecoin with one of the largest NGOs in the world. I can't announce who it is yet, but everyone has heard the name. You see them when you're like going Christmas shopping each year out there collecting money.
Yeah.
And basically the way it works is they go deliver cash in crisis zones, but now they've created a regulated stable coin that they're going to issue in a private smart contract, and they're going to hand out QR codes instead. So they're going to be handing out stable coins that are regulated in a private smart contract, but the actual smart contract itself is auditable by the contract owner. So it protects the users moving funds around from being exposed. And it's a whole new way to deliver that. And we're talking like tens of billions a year delivered in this fashion. So we have these major use cases. Another one's a counterfeit medicine detection network that's co-sponsored by the African Free Trade Agreement, just 52 countries. So it's going to roll out so people can scan their medicine bottles and then verify on chain its authenticity. So those are what we call the flagship projects. And then we have Launchpad. So we have a nice, like thriving, early contributor networks. We're going to be rolling out a few of these projects and letting them, letting the token holders, similar to Trust Swap, buy into the early stage projects. And then we've also seen a lot of migration activity from Luna. Their collapse has made a lot of people look at where they can deploy. There were some amazing products. They were coded in Rust. Our smart contracts are coded in Rust. So we're actually seeing a few projects already starting to port over, try to move onto our chain. And I think one of the cool benefits is we're early. So if you do come on our chain now, you get a lot of exposure because we're highlighting you. You're not jumping into a basket of 20,000 other projects trying to launch. So it's a good time to try to join up with us because we do a lot of marketing of all the initial use cases.
Gotcha. Yeah. And those applications are definitely valuable. One of the questions that I have would be, just to highlight maybe the clarity on what the value proposition is really for a private smart contract in the, let's say, the example of that charity that has the audited stablecoin or the regulated stablecoin. What does it, what does a private smart contract or a private function have over, just public? It's a stablecoin, off we go.
Yeah, in that specific use case, you need it to remain private for the users who are the beneficiaries. Because if you are receiving cash, for example, the warlords are coming and stealing the cash, and like it gets embezzled and the funds get lost and there's no audit trail. So you want the movement of funds to stay private to protect the beneficiaries. You don't want people and criminal groups to be able to start tracking the money around and figure out where it's going and then try to go hijack or steal it. So that in that specific use case, you're protecting the beneficiaries because they're in very dangerous situations. So it keeps it anonymous who received the donation for how much. And then you need that auditability to stay in compliance if you're the issuer. In the TradeFi gap, that's really important and you need privacy. And that's one of the main reasons they're going to come with us, because if I'm a major supply chain company, I can't have all my deals publicly on the blockchain. There might be a $200 million deal that I can't have that data exposed on the public chain. As blockchains develop and publicly traded companies start leveraging them, then you really can't have that type of data be public, because then people will front run the markets. If Apple were to put their whole supply chain on a blockchain that everyone could see, you would be able to quickly identify and collect analytics on exactly how many goods and products were shipped ahead of quarterly earnings reports, and you could front run markets. And so, these companies have to keep all of their financial information completely private and internal before announcing the figures each quarter. So you need private smart contract coordination for these types of entities.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm a huge advocate for privacy. When I look at, let's say, something like Monero, and maybe this will be the most subjective question of the chat here, but you see governments coming in and looking at Monero and trying to really pick holes in it, and they see Monero as a risk and a threat. And so I think we both understand that privacy has many, many benefits. However, everything can be a tool used in both the right and wrong way. How do you anticipate this is going to go in terms of regulation, where there will inevitably be some tool or DApp that rubs regulators the wrong way? And because it's private, they just start to, it irks them. What's the thought or strategy surrounding that? It's a lofty question, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, it's a great question, because it's probably one of the biggest long-term issues any privacy feature will face. What if a manipulator comes and uses it for purposes it's not supposed to be used for? And the short answer on our blockchain is that the node operators have a bit more control. So if there was some type of abusive or questionable smart contract, the node operators could, in theory, probably shut that down. And I think that's just the way that it's going to go with these networks. You have maybe anonymous, like proof of work node operators on some of the private coins. I believe Monero is proof of work. But you don't necessarily know who's minding the transactions. There's no way to figure it out. Our chain is a bit more leaning towards long-term compliance, where the node operators are known to each other and basically go through a vetting process before they're onboarded. And there's a decentralized version of that has nothing to do with our foundation. But basically, the node operators can coordinate with each other, so that if someone, like a bunch of nodes, start trying to add to the network, they can basically have to allow them in. And have some type of governance and control over the network. So the idea here is they would be able to stop anything that was truly nefarious. They won't be able to crack the smart contract and expose what's happened. So it's not like they're going to be able to expose the privacy that the users are being offered. But we call it jurisdiction management, is the way we term the feature. We're basically allowing those node operators to have a bit more structure over the network. There's even a way for dApps to choose which jurisdictions they want transactions to allow to be finalized in. So as the network matures, let's say you're a European Union product and you only want transactions finalized by node ops in the European Union, there's a way to point your dApps towards those nodes so that you don't have a Chinese node mining your transactions where the jurisdiction is then questionable.
Right.
So, this product is designed for more serious use cases. We hired a new CMO, and our brand is heading in a direction of Partisia blockchain infrastructure solving major economic problems. And then we're going to look at the various use cases, counterfeit goods, TradeFi gaps, which opens up a whole new DeFi economy that's so big. The potential and size is so big. And then, more NGO use cases like replacing cash with private stable coins. These are all, $10 billion plus a year issues. So that's where our brand is heading. And, this technology, blockchain, whether the initial adopters like it or not, it's heading towards a compliance required sort of economy. And we're going to see that, I think we're going to see the maturation of the industry by 2030. So over the next 8 years, we're going to see these major use cases like TradeFi, where people don't get paid 1.7 trillion a year. Blockchains are going to help solve that and escrow funds properly in a more trustless, decentralized way. But we're also going to see probably some crackdown over node operators, who's running networks. So we already designed in advance for that inevitable scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely have projects or chains that, there's a spectrum of compliance and maybe renegade anarchism. And I think there's always going to be projects on both sides of those spectrums. So from what I understand, you guys are very much gearing towards compliance, long-term sustainability. That to be said, I think, Bitcoin's mining can be quite robust and resilient no matter who tries to crack down on it. It's just going to move around. But I definitely understand where you're coming from on the compliance. In terms of the network validators, though, so then is that who can become a validator, and are there validator rewards? What's the high level process, not to get too detailed on it?
Absolutely. So the initial early contribution round, which is like our pre-sale, most of the purchasers are node operators, actually. So one of our biggest contributors is p2p.org. They purchased a relatively substantial amount of tokens in the pre-sale. And they're one of the biggest delegated staking providers and node infrastructure providers in the industry. I think if you go to p2p.org, you can basically see they probably have, who knows, after the market crash, just under 3 billion in staked assets. So these are the types of people running our nodes. There is a spectrum. I'd say this is the highest end and most professional group who's operating a node and has the most experience. And there are still people who are just at home and set up their own VPS and make sure they're running a good system. So it is open to anyone. There is no restrictions, and that's great. We're launching a lot of good documentation on how you can boot your node up. We're launching the zero knowledge nodes in June. So there are 3 tiers of nodes: Baker, your basic blockchain transactions; zero knowledge nodes, which runs the MPC and does private computation. And then we call it BYOC nodes, bring your own coin, because we allow different chains to bring their own coin, and fees on network are paid in the other coins. So you can bring ETH over and make a bunch of transactions on Partisia blockchain and pay in ETH.
Right.
So the node operators are earning liquid tokens, which we designed it that way in the beginning because it's very hard to bootstrap any network where you need to be paying rewards in your own token. You need to keep that economy liquid. So if there's a high network throughput happening and everyone's getting paid in ETH, it's easy for them to liquidate that ETH, and it keeps the sell pressure off our token. So we use our utility. You have to stake and post the collateral to run your nodes. You have to stake and post collateral to run zero knowledge smart contracts. So we built the utility into the actual usage rather than as a means of payment, which is a different design that I think we're probably one of the only people who've done. And so I think that's, as I mentioned, it's about easing that pressure in the early days of the network where node operators are trying to, have to liquidate the rewards to stay liquid and make sure that it's a profitable endeavor. That being said, we do have an ecosystem token pool. So we're giving out 12% APR of automated rewards for the node operators staking and running. So if you stake up to 500,000 tokens, you're getting 5,000 tokens a month if you had 500,000 staked.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So if we're looking at, let's say, the competition, I understand that what a lot of the aspects on Partisia are quite proprietary and unique and not done anywhere else. But just looking at the landscape, you have Phantom, fully diluted market cap. We're looking at 1.1 billion, Neo 1 billion, Harmony 600 million, Quantum 450 million. And between those blockchains, let's say there's been ecosystems built out, they're running, they have brand recognition, and a track record. So with the launch of Partisia, and I understand you can't comment on price and movements and things like that, but just to kind of give more of a fundamental analysis view of it, you guys are launching, from what I understand, at a $400 million valuation, which puts you basically on par with Quantum and just under Harmony. What are the key factors where you make that analysis and say, you know what, this is why we feel like this, like we have this value? I understand you've built some proprietary aspects. Do you feel that that is what brings you to 400 million, or do you have some backers? What's kind of in the back pocket that you feel like this is really what gets us there?
Yeah, I suppose I'm not a valuation expert, but I'll give it a shot. I would say, we raised $50 million. So we have 50 million in cash. We held only USD. So we've kept ourselves unexposed to the crypto volatility. We've sold about 1/3 of the tokens, let's call it. So if we just kept selling every token at the same rate, we would have $150 million. But the market really decides the valuation, right? And so, we've been receiving private sale from highly strategic partners at a 320 million fully diluted. So really the valuation is set by the people paying for the tokens, and that's what they've been paying at. In terms of the fully diluted value, that's, crypto valuations are tricky. They're never very, I'd say, accurate because of the way the dilution works. We charted out the tokenomics. I think, we're 50% diluted after the first 4 years. Maybe it's 60. So, if we're talking about the first 4 years, 50, 60%, then you're really only looking at, 200, 300 million valuation at this stage, because a lot of the additional tokens after that is just treasury and ecosystem grants can be issued. Doesn't even necessarily mean they ever will be. So, I think from a multiplier on the cash, if we're looking at it more realistically, calling it a 200 million based on the dilution, having $50 million, 4x that of value, the technology, the different partnerships. We do have some backers who are very involved in R&D with us. So there's a lot of really high tech, high value things coming alongside this chain that will be seen over the next 6 to 12 months. So I think the market decides. So, I think our ambition is to be a top 10 layer one. So in order to do that, you need to raise at reasonable valuations that may seem high, but you need to protect the overall value and dilution of the network. All of our pre-sale people are on 4-year quarterly unlock. So everyone's on a really long-term commitment with us. And we wouldn't have done it any other way. We didn't budge. That was our thing with anyone who was participating. Is we just basically said, hey, this is a long run project. It's a layer one. It's with a team that's highly credentialed. So Partisia's been working on advanced cryptography for decades. So this is a 10-year project for us to see how far we can mature and bring blockchain to mainstream use cases. So for us, that's just where we're at.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I can definitely agree with you that it's a breath of fresh air to have long vesting in projects spread across the board for everybody. I think too many people treat crypto as a casino and not something where they're very much supporting a vision and a movement. So I think that's good on you guys for sticking to that. In terms of the ecosystem play, are you guys going to have any DEXs built on so that people can trade native assets, or what's that going to look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have decks coming. We have a Launchpad NFT marketplace. Then we have these, higher tier projects like the TradeFi Gap with its own DeFi marketplace, which is a totally different type of decentralized finance. But yeah, so we focus on usability tools right now because it's the early days. So we built the wallet, we built the block explorer, mpcexplorer.com. You can check it out. I think there's 90 validators currently live. The wallet's the Partisia wallet. It's on Google Chrome. And then, we have like error monitoring, node uptime monitoring. So really making sure the usability tools are in place. And then of course the DEX is next because you need to have that type of system set up for new projects to launch tokens.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that'll be live in the next couple months. And yeah, I mean, all the basic tools are coming.
Fantastic. One final question, something that you touched on a little bit, but I personally need a little bit of clarity on MPC as a service. Can you touch on that a little bit and what that means?
Exactly. So imagine you want to run a secure custody solution. So you engage a private company like Firelocks. You need to engage that company. You need to then set up a private environment using their sandboxes and testing and working with their integration engineers and getting your own system running. And then you have your system. As MPC as a service, this is an open source decentralized network. So the node operators are running the zero knowledge nodes, the zero knowledge smart contracts, the different cross-chain MPC key sharing. So as a developer, you don't need to engage a private company, set up terms and engagement. You just need to buy tokens and deploy them. And then you can start running MPC on your DApp for privacy. So MPC as a service is we make it open source and available. This is the first time ever that MPC technology is open source and available, and it's running by a group of decentralized node operators. As a group, Partisia, who's been selling MPC technology, we've seen some of the pitfalls when it's used in private environments. And the lack of decentralization is one of them. What's the point of us having a secret key sharing scheme if it's just me, you, Jeff, and one other person? If we decided, oh, you know what, we don't like this network anymore, let's just deconstruct it, we can do that easily. But if you're deploying private smart contracts to hundreds of node operators who are managing and overseeing those activities, the MPC as a service is ready and available out of the box and available cross-chain. So we offer that service to other chains. You can deploy MPC token stake, deploy private smart contracts, and you can finalize the outcome on your existing DApp. So that's where we're seeing our network effect and product market fit starting to take off.
Gotcha. Fantastic. As we're wrapping up, is there anything that you feel like we missed, whether it's going over a couple new hires or potentially some of the things that you feel are the least talked about in Partisia that you feel were highlighted a little bit more?
Yeah, so before we started recording the call, I was kind of telling you just sort of stuck in the weeds of multiple hats. It's a startup. When you're running a startup, you're doing all sorts of different things within the company, and we're at a stage now where we are hiring and staffing out. So we did just hire our chief marketing officer. Her name is Yulia. She was the head of crypto go-to-market at PayPal. So she actually launched crypto for PayPal, largest fintech company in the world. We convinced her to leave PayPal for 10 years to join us as chief marketing officer. And so she's already been here 2 weeks. We're going to announce her officially to the press any day now. And it's just been amazing to see, me and my co-founders and our small team. We were the ones doing the marketing and the branding ourselves in the early days. Now we're getting to a point where now we're bringing in experts. And when you see the way they can sort of deconstruct all the value propositions that we have and figure out where we are in the market, comparing us to the competitors, that's an insanely good hire that we just made. And I'm so happy she joined because over the next 12 months, she's going to get so much more professional in the way that we're, showcasing this project and the real value it brings. We hired a chief operating officer. I can't say who he is yet because he doesn't start for another 2 weeks. But he came from one of the top 10 networks where he was their general secretariat, which is such a European title. I've never heard of that title, but essentially it means like chief of staff, chief operating officer. So for us, he'll be our chief operating officer. That's going to be incredible. The team is big now. I think there's almost 70 people working on the project. We structure the team in a few different arenas. So we have the infrastructure team, and that's the protocol, the zero knowledge technology. So they're the ones, building the actual infrastructure. There's the application team, which is where I spend more of my time, building the wallets, the block explorers, template smart contracts for developers, onboarding new developers. Now we have marketing building out, the new CMO hire. 70 people, it's starting to get serious, and it's amazing because we do have people all over the world now. Even though Partisia is Danish, a lot of the developer team is right there in Denmark in the office. But we have been hiring remote, so we have people from all different countries all over the world, and it's amazing just to get to know everyone and have them be a part of the team. So the company culture is getting really exciting internally, and everyone's very happy. So that's kind of where we're at.
Fantastic. Right on. And so for anyone who's listening, the launch of Partisia on TrustSwap goes live in less than 24 hours of this recording. So if you want to get in on that, that's trustswap.com, and then just click on the dashboard. It'll navigate you right there, or you can just look it up on Google, just search the terms. However, if you're listening to this after May 19th, then Brian, do you want to give them a little bit of heads up on what the next steps for Partisia are or where they can learn more?
Yeah, we have a small limited public sale to our community. So you have to, even TrustSwap, if you want to participate in TrustSwap, you have to KYC at kyc.partisiablockchain.com. It doesn't take long. We can verify you in under 24 hours. But if you miss TrustSwap because you don't happen to see the recording or hear the news, you can participate in the public sale on May 31st. Just go to partisiablockchain.com/sale for the info. But that's where that'll take place. Then over those next 6 months, it's going to be listings and sort of going to market. The TGE happens on the same day of the public sale. So the actual decentralized mainnet, we're leaving betanet and going to mainnet 3.0, actually, I believe it is. And that's it. I mean, there's no turning back.
Right on. Exciting times, Brian. Fingers crossed for you and the team, and wishing you guys all the best.
Thanks. Super long-term projects. We're going to just keep building through the market and keep adding value to the different communities and developers. So for us, we're not phased at all by the current, market volatility. Because even all the pre-sale people, you're stuck with us for 4 years, so we'll be building together.
It's not a cult.
No.
Yeah. All right. So for everyone listening, head over to partisiablockchain.com. Check them out. Brian, thanks again for swinging on.
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Talk to you soon.